Hello and welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast. My name is Graham Arrowsmith.
And my name's Kevin Appleby. So anybody watching this on video today, Graham, will realise that our guest has a rather different work uniform on to our normal guests. But we're not going to talk about the Royal Navy, I don't think.
Well, we might do it in part, but no, we've got Phil Spencer, who is the head man at London DE. Welcome to the Next 100 Days podcast, Phil.
Thank you, and good morning.
Good morning. Well, you are dressed appropriately for the Royal Navy, but not necessarily for your day job. Tell us a bit more about the Royal Navy.
Certainly, yes. I'm currently serving as a reservist in the Royal Navy, having served as a regular for a number of years. But my business career started approximately 12 years ago. So I now sort of juggle the two between that and also a young family as well. My primary day job is running London DE, which is, as you mentioned, is a fine jewellery and gold trading business based in the City of London.
Yeah, what's really interesting is I had the privilege of meeting you at your offices last week, and you told us a bit of a story. It was quite an infamous story in a way, but back in the day, many of our listeners might actually remember there was quite a big robbery on Hatton Garden.
There's an interesting connection there because our office is opposite 88 to 90, which is the location of the famous heist made famous by Michael Caine and a few other people in some recent films. So we believe, actually, we just before we moved into our current office, we believe one of the lookouts from the heist was in our office, sort of casing the joint, as it were, at some point prior to the robbery. So there's a very direct connection there. But we were actually fortunate in that we had an office previously in that same building, 8890, but luckily nothing in the vault. So we weren't affected by the actual heist itself. But high drama, which is still very much, even almost 10 years on, it's still very much talked about locally.
You have to, I mean, you're working in one of the most valuable, attractive businesses in the world. I mean, fine jewellery, gold, precious gemstones. It's quite an industry. And what was it that first attracted you to that market? What got you into that market?
Yeah, it's a good question. We a number of my family and family friends worked in the jewellery and gemstone industry in various guises. So although I hadn't previously worked in the industry myself, I've been exposed to it for a number of years through various contacts and people in my network and my circle. So I always had a fascination for gemstones, and in particular and gold, and in particular Colombian emeralds sort of caught my eye. I had a family friend who originated from South America, from Bogota. So that was how my first trip there was, I believe, 2011. I literally fell in love with the whole kind of gemstone market. I found it absolutely fascinating, very different to the diamond market, very different to any other market I'd ever been involved in before. And it was something that I really wanted to get into. I really liked the fact that it was, in a sense, an untouched market by a lot of Western businesses. So I wanted to really kind of be a bit of a trailblazer and look at how we can build an ethical angle into the supply chain. So that was really how it started, and then we obviously built around that the fine jewelry brand, which is continuing to evolve, and I'm sure we'll come on to. But yeah, that was the kind of genesis, and then since then it's developed over time. We opened our first office in London, and then we opened an office in Bogota, and more recently in Dubai, which is again something I'm sure we'll come on to. It's a very big gold trading and gemstone trading hub, as well as obviously a massive luxury retail market. So yeah, that was really the kind of the instigation of it, and then over time I've just become more and more drawn into it, and I've studied it and actually got into the ins and outs of the industry itself, and that's become a real passion of mine.
Oh, there's a clear passion there, Phil. You're sitting there in a Royal Navy uniform. Which is the bigger passion, being a sailor or working the gem and gold market?
I would say certainly my primary focus is on the gold and gemstone markets. As much as I enjoy my service in the Navy, it's a secondary activity now
It,
to get to my main
it's
day
just
job.
it's just trying to foot fault you, Phil. That's totally unfair. I mean, blimey, he loves a bit because you're a yachtsman as well, aren't you? I mean, you love
Yeah.
the water.
Yeah, I'm definitely. I think I was a fish in former life. I've certainly spent more time on and around the water than I have on land, I think. So yeah, I'm definitely a lover of the sea.
So, I mean, if you said to yourself, Kevin, that what's your favourite thing other than the work that you're doing, what would it be?
I'll probably play with Motorola.
Well, yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, you love that, don't you? Like, in fairness, that is something of an interest that you've had all your life, isn't it? Yeah, I guess that. Yeah.
Or if we're playing a bit better, it'd be watching Newcastle United.
Oh well, yeah. I mean, well, football's my weakness as well. But going back to Phil and to London DE, and you can actually find out more about London DE. You just put in London and then de.com, and you'll find more about their business. But what we're going to do is, one of the things I want to dive down into is this Bogota thing. Now, when I was in your offices last week, you actually showed me a stone that you'd actually mined yourself, and inside or wedged within that stone, it's only like less than my wrist here, my clenched fist. That stone had an emerald in it, or at least a part of an emerald. Tell us the story behind you digging out this particular emerald.
Yeah, so I'm in Bogota very regularly. I'm in fact there again next month. And part of my I say not so the same direct related to the trade that I do, but more for my sort of background, understanding of the industry and connections with the mining side of it. I've often visited the principal mining sites, including Muso. It's probably the most famous of them, but there are many others. It's like Cosquez, Chivor, etc. But in particular, in Muso, there's a number of active mines where we are buying stones directly from the mine owners and the top tier dealers there. So we have a good relationship with some of the mine owners, and we're able to go and visit and go down some of these mines, which can be a little bit daunting because their health and safety is different to the UK. So in one instance, they were dynamiting in a tunnel next door to us, which is slightly unnerving. You smell cordite and hear the rumbles of various things.
Yeah.
They also let me loose on a jackhammer against a live emerald seam, which I made a mess of, but I managed to get a few rocks out of.
Yeah.
And one of them that was actually bearing hexagonal emerald crystals, the one that's in my office.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that was literally from the coal face or from the emerald face. But it's fascinating, and the lack of sophistication is quite remarkable. It's still done literally by eye. They have very little equipment to work with. Very little industrialization is taking place in that particular sector of the market. So it is quite antiquated, and it's fascinating. It's a real experience, and I'd recommend anyone who gets a chance to go out to Muso or any of the mining regions. It's well worth the 4 or 5 hours in a bumpy road to get there from Bogota.
Well, I mean, it's a bucket list thing there, Phil. But at the end of it, of course, you have to have a pick and a shovel to get your desired stone out of it. But having said that, you've obviously found a way of actually dealing with people ethically, but also you've got a business brain as well, because you're buying these gemstones and accessing places, gold, etc., and then you're placing it in other places at a higher rate, which is creating value, creating arbitrage, if you like, in between the two. And effectively, isn't that what London DE is about? Or can you perhaps put it in more eloquent words?
Yeah, so the key concept for us is mine to market.
Right.
We want to operate from the very top of the supply chain right the way down to the very end of the supply chain. So that enables us to really take value at every level. So when you buy a gemstone from a jeweler's shop window, typically that's gone through as many as 10 or 15 separate hands on its journey to your finger. So we're trying to move as many hands back up that chain as possible, and that gives us then the opportunity to sell to business and wholesale markets, along the length of the chain, right through to the end consumer at the bottom, where the highest margins are. That gives us the volume and the value. So that's really bad. Same with the gold trading as well. That's a similar principle, that we're working with the top tier dealers, top tier suppliers, and we're able then to operate in a very lean way when it comes to actually dealing with the end consumer.
The gold's not from Colombia though, or is it?
No. So currently we're not sourcing gold directly from Colombia, other than for jewellery manufacture, because the export controls there are quite tricky to navigate. But most of the gold we're currently trading comes from Africa and Southeast Asia.
Okay. And one of the things that London DE prides itself on is this ethical trading, which has got to be good news for anybody who's interested in you. But what is it that makes you ethical?
Sure. Yeah. So I think the key there is the mine to market approach. So we do have eyes on from the mine head all the way through to the end consumer. So we can see what's going on. We chances are we know the guy who's dug it out of the ground, to put it in layman's terms. So we have that full visibility on the whole length of the supply chain. And that's been formalized with certain relationships that we have. For example, we're a member of the RJC, the Responsible Jewellery Council, the NAJ, National Association of Jewellers, the Fair Mine Initiative, and we're also working with a couple of other philanthropic and fair trade organisations to promote good practice. And we see that as very important for the long-term sustainability of the industry, to be able to demonstrate that no one's being exploited and the environment's not being damaged as a result of what we're doing, which I think is a very important sort of fundamental value.
I mean, going right at the top of that supply chain, though, Phil, you told us a few minutes ago that that's very, very old technology. You're down a mine shaft, very little health and safety. Would you say that the workers that are taking the gems out of the ground are receiving fair return, receiving appropriate working conditions?
Yes, they are. So that's all part of the audits that we've conducted, so the principle of fair pay, working conditions, but also under the Fair Mine Initiative, a portion of the profits are reinvested in the local communities. So, for example, they provide textbooks for local schools, safe housing for local workers. There's various initiatives around that that they're working on. So we've seen that firsthand, and obviously we've been involved in the audit process for that, which gives us a very good understanding for what's going on. I think most people in our industry are quite removed from the actual mine head. We want to be hands-on, and we want to demonstrate that we know what's going on. We know from the point of origin to the point of sale what journey that gemstone or that piece of gold, whatever it may be, has taken. And I think, as I say, that's important for the long-term sustainability of the whole market.
The actual market that you're in, though, fine jewellery, fine stones, etc. The price to the end customer, the using person, can be quite a lot. I mean, I hesitate to say that several £1,000s for these things. Give us an idea of what's charged for these stones at the retail level.
Yeah, so it varies enormously. A lot of the big brands, I won't mention them by name because I don't want to get sued, but some of the big brands will mark up jewellery typically by 500%, sometimes more. We try to adhere to a fair pricing principle where we wouldn't go to that extent. But yes, the margins are very, very, very healthy. There is some exploitation of consumers in terms of some of the big brands are certainly overcharging for what they're delivering, but that's probably not unique to the jewelry industry. I think that's just high retail across the board. If you buy a luxury handbag, the likelihood is that 95% of that is profit for the brands rather than the actual item itself. I think transparency is quite key here as well. That there's a lot of distortion of value along the chain sometimes, which can easily.
For London DE though, because you're at mine to market, you've got lots of opportunities to make fair returns, and actually really quite fair returns. And recently, you've decided to actually raise some money to develop London DE to actually attract investors to your business. If you had to sort of say in a sort of soundbite, Phil, why somebody should invest in you, and don't get me wrong, we can talk about the details of that investment, but why should somebody invest in London DE right now with the prospect of the future? I mean, you shared with me a few things last week that I was thinking, wow, yes, that's a really interesting future. Tell us a little bit more about what an investor should consider when they're looking at London DE.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we've touched on a few points. The mine to market principle, which has sort of two facets to it. On the one hand, the value it offers, and on the other hand, the ethical transparency. So I think that's an important consideration. When it comes to bottom line, of course, it is a high margin business. We're well established. We're in our 11th year of trading. So we're experienced in the market, and we know how to generate some significant profits. So the financial rewards are there as well. So, for example, we offer a fixed income investment to investors, which pays a monthly interest rate. So that's market beating rates, certainly well beyond anything that a bank will offer you, for example. So there's significant financial uplift as well. I think also just to support the activities that we're involved in as well. I think there's say a philanthropic aspect to what we're doing in terms of supporting local communities in some very deprived parts of the world, and also offering value for money to consumers, and actually undercutting some of the big brands who are overcharging for what they're delivering. So I think there's also an ethical angle to it as well in that sense, as well as a high degree of security, because we're working with very tangible assets that appreciate in value. So there's a high degree of safety when it comes to people who invest with us, as well as high returns.
That is understood. I mean, the specific opportunity I think for investors is currently a loan note, which basically means that you provide some of your money, and in return, as you mentioned, you get monthly a monthly payback, and then your money back at the end of that term. Now, the opportunity was looked at by, because with all these loan notes, you need to have your, shall we say, your numbers and all the sort of due diligence looked at. Now, tell us a little bit about that, because that's got to be of interest to investors, that you yourself were put under some, shall we say, pressure to cross the T's and dot the I's.
Yes, and we've now been running this program for 5 years. So we've got a very solid track record. We've used a security trustee as an independent overseer. So they sort of mark our homework for us, so we're not marking it ourselves. And we have a very strong relationship with our investor base, and also with our trustee. So that relationship's worked very well. And over time, we've built up a very solid network of investors. Some are actually more hands-on than others. So we've got some who have an interest in the industry, and they like to participate. And in fact, we've taken people down to mines before, to show them the sharp end. Other people are armchair investors. They just simply want the returns, and they're happy to sit back and relax and enjoy those. So really, it's a myriad of different motivations behind it, but the commonality is that it's a highly secure investment, and it pays a good return. And for most people, that's that.
And you're going to build out London DE as a result of these investments.
Exactly. Yeah. So as I alluded to earlier on, we're actually in the process of rebranding some of our jewellery lines. So, for example, we're bringing what will be the Silvera London brand, which is going live next month. So that's going to be all of our fine jewellery offering will be under that brand new offering. Yeah. And we're also launching a direct-to-consumer gold trading platform called London Gold Exchange, which is live at the moment, but it's being fully rebranded, fully refurbished, essentially. And then also the parent company, London DE, is also expanding and increasing its business-to-business trading activities. So there's a lot going on, a lot of moving parts.
Yeah.
But we're staying true to the jewelry, gemstone, and gold sectors. We're not going to deviate from those. But within that market or those markets, we're diversifying and we're growing rapidly. And in particular, we're focusing geographically on Latin America, Europe, and the Middle East. It's the three main growth regions for us.
I mean, you're going from places like South America, which I know a little bit about. My daughter-in-law comes from Brazil, but basically you're over there in Colombia. But also you've got this link to the very, very wealthy and increasingly wealthy Dubai. So you've got, and of course, London, which is a wonderful hub anyway. And you're literally right in the heart of that market. You've really picked out certain parts of the world where your activities can generate proper wealth. And it just strikes me that you're very much onto something.
Yeah. I think also that the main aim that we're trying to achieve here is not just to essentially focus on one thing and get good at that. We want to have a portfolio of mix of metals, multiple strings to our bow.
Yeah.
So you'll find a lot of people are focusing now on the gold trade and nothing else. And obviously people will focus on different aspects. So by combining that together, and that we arrived at that from the starting point of actually having to source gold to manufacture jewelry. So essentially, we've gone right back to the point of origin and worked our way downstream from there. So that's one of the keys of differentiators between ourselves and many of the other people out there who are literally just offering gold investments to people, often with no real background in that market and often with no real trading history in that market as well. So again, that's something that's fairly unique to us in that we have that collection of skills and experience, and we're involved in those multiple closely related markets at the same time.
Your competitors then are not necessarily as ethical as you.
No, they're not, and also they're not often as experienced. So you'll find a lot of, and especially in the last sort of 12, 24 months, with all the positive media coverage of the gold market, a lot of companies have sprung up, professing to be experts in that marketplace, and they're not. They don't have the experience, they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the network. So there's a lot of that kind of thing going on at the moment. So
yeah, you probably come across the Kevin Appleby gold from my shed company that he's running.
Well, funnily enough, Graham, my other half has been trading in an amount of gold recently. So it gives me a feel of what's going on here. And Ruth inherited from her mum one or two bits of jewellery that she absolutely hated. And there's a very good jeweller in Newcastle who makes stuff. And a couple of eye openers there, that Ruth's taken some of these pieces and had them made into something different. Also taken in bits of jewelry she didn't want and said, can you use the gold from this? And discovered huge value that gold has at the moment, really high prices, but also discovered pieces of jewelry that were bought for relatively expensive amounts of money, where you're told when a decent jeweler has a look at it, oh, the stones in here are rubbish, we can't use those.
It catches up with you, doesn't it? I mean, the beauty of what you're doing, Phil, is that there's an honesty to it and the quality of the product. I mean, is it likely, being honest now, is it likely that other parts of the world have better quality stones? Or is it a bit like all stones are created equal? Or are some stones very, very much better than others?
Yeah, I would say that the latter. There are parts of the world that specialize in certain types of gemstone. So, for example, Colombia, the reason we focus on Colombia is Colombian emeralds are universally agreed as being the finest emeralds in the world, mostly in terms of transparency, depth of color, and a myriad of geeky things I could go into that might bore you. But the key message is that Colombian emeralds are by far the best quality emeralds the world. Also true of a number of other stones. So, for example, Burma ruby have a very strong reputation. Kashmir sapphire, not that there are many of those left because they stopped producing them 100 years ago. Ceylon sapphire as well. A lot of regional Paraíba tourmaline in Brazil, for example. The list goes on and on and on. So yes, there are geographical areas that specialize in very fine stones of particular species and type. Yeah, that's important. And provenance is a major influencer on price and value. So a lot of, for example, a lot of emeralds you'll see in shop windows will often be Zambian stones, and there's actually nothing wrong with Zambian stones, but they are not quite the same quality as Colombian. So people will try and present them as if they are Colombian stones, and obviously there's a huge amount of skullduggery around that goes on in the industry as well.
Is it easily spotted, Phil, between, say, a Zambian emerald, presumably?
If you know what you're looking for, you can tell with a loop. But certainly a gem lab can tell. And you can tell to a degree with the naked eye because it's visibly the coloration is visibly deeper with Colombian stones than it is with African stones. So yeah, it's very easy to tell one from another. But obviously, if someone's inexperienced, they could be duped, or they could just not understand the difference. So yeah, part of the issues, education, people actually understanding what the differences are. And treatments is another sort of big issue when it comes to stones and the effect they have on value, the effect they have on the stone itself, and often that then feeds into the certification process, which can be very opaque as well. There's a lot of gem labs have sprung up that are literally just writing out certificates based on how much they're paid by the seller. So there's certain gem labs that you can and can't trust. And then obviously the whole issue around treatments and how they're presented and transparency with those as well. So there's a lot of nuance around those. But we always use certain laboratories that have that background, so we can demonstrate the true provenance of a stone and what treatments have been done to it.
You have this relationship with the originators, shall we say, that basically you don't pay them anything until it's assayed, is it? Do you? We're talking about gold in particular.
Gold, yes, yeah. So that in the gold market, there's a tremendous amount of seller fraud, which is a major issue, which is getting worse, if anything. So yeah, when it comes to buying gold, we only pay for it on assay and delivery, which prevents that.
Yeah, that's kind of important to anybody that wants to, consider investing in London DE. But if you had to be straight with particular investors who are thinking, oh, hold on a minute, this is slightly different. What would be the risk that you would be taking on by investing in London DE?
Sure. Well, there's never anything without any risk whatsoever. But we've done everything that we can to mitigate that risk as far as possible. So, for example, we have multiple routes to market. We don't rely on any one source of gold or gemstones for that matter. We are engaged in multiple markets. They're closely related, from fine jewellery to gemstones to gold and precious metals. So again, we have a degree of diversification. We're not there's not all of our eggs in one basket scenario. We are also resilient to the price of gold. People often say, oh, what happens if the price of gold collapses? We have minimal exposure to movements in gold price. So that is essentially not a risk factor to us. The maximum exposure we have is about 2 or 3 hours to the spot price movement. So nothing's going to happen in that space of time that would have a material impact. So we're pretty well protected. And of course, if the world economy picks up, which we all hope it does, there's a possibility of a correction in the gold price, which could always happen. But the trading volumes are about $150 billion a day. So even a substantial movement in that, which is unlikely anyway, would have a minimal impact on the overall market. So yeah, if the price of gold did reduce, in actual fact, it just makes it more cost effective to sell our jewellery. So we actually have both sides of the coin covered, as it were.
It feels like you're a bit of a bank, really. Heads you win, tails you win. I don't know. Is that the feeling that you're getting, Kevin?
Well, yeah, and that's an interesting one about gold price. So, do you ever see the price of jewellery in the jeweler's window coming down? But you
Not
know that gold goes up and down.
price of jewelry is actually remarkably unrelated to to the price
Yeah,
of the most. Good example is platinum. So platinum is currently about half the price of gold on the wholesale market. But for most jewelers will charge a premium for platinum.
yeah,
Yeah,
which
that
is
relates.
bizarre.
The other interesting one, of course, is silver, and silver, I believe, is around 13 times below the price of gold, which is the highest ratio that's ever been.
Hmm.
So silver is another interesting one. That what will happen with the silver market, especially as it's now being used in EV batteries and lots of industrial uses.
Hmm.
It's part of the reason that platinum has dropped in prices because it's used in catalytic converters, and as petrol and diesel cars reduce in number, the actual consumption of platinum is going down. So lots of things you wouldn't necessarily think would have any bearing whatsoever on the price of precious metals can do. But yeah, EVs
But
is a particularly interesting one.
actually, that switch from petrol and diesel cars to EVs is going to have a significant effect on lots of markets.
Yeah,
And for instance, I think we've got a problem coming up that if everybody goes and buys a Tesla like Graham, and
It's not my fault.
where are all the minerals coming from to actually make the batteries for the things? How many new mineral mines do we have to open up on the planet?
yeah. I think if they continue to use the same rate of rare metals and rare earth metals and precious metals, then will it simply run out of them before they
Yeah,
can turn the whole world into an EV only?
Yeah,
um,
what will actually happen, Kevin, is the government will give you a hoop and stick, and I'll keep my Tesla. So basically, don't worry about it. You'll still be able to go along the street, with your hoop and stick. So, you don't know what that means, do you? You're too young, probably. But
that's
anyway,
fine.
the thing is,
That implies a Labour government, Graham, reducing everything to the level of the barest minimum, which is just the way socialism normally goes.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but all I would say is that London DE, you're in this sort of sourcing, trading in a market that has demand at one end, um, a reasonable supply at another, and this it's the supply bit that you've really got your head around, isn't it? Because a lot of people are in this demand bit, jewelers and all the rest of it, and but you go through the wholesaling and the retailing, etc. But you've you've got your head around this digging it out bit. Was it about relationships that enabled you to develop, that strength in that original supply, or what was it? What was did you just offer more money? I mean, what made you favored over the next guy?
Well, when I started this in 2012, 2013, I think we formally launched. My starting principle was I need to actually make sure that I fully understand the market and build the right relationships. So for the first 5 years, 4 or 5 years, I drove my wife nuts because I disappeared off at sort of 7 a.m. every morning into our spare room. I locked myself in and I literally built everything up, working on my own initially, and then started to build up a network of people. So I fully understood the market, flew over to Colombia at my own expense, flew over to various other places at my own expense, to make sure that I built everything from the ground up. I spent the best part of half a decade doing that before I then switched over and used that knowledge, experience, and that client base and that supplier base to then start to fundraise, to build a team. So it was only really in about 2018, after 5 years of that groundwork, that we then started to actually bring in employees, bring in investors, bring in all of the other sort of requirements to build the business to the next level.
You,
So I
you,
think by building it from the ground up, we've grounded ourselves in the industry, so we understand it properly before we just dive in and make a mess of it, which is what a lot of companies do at the moment with the gold market. They're
you've
rushing into it, they don't understand it, and they're making a
you've
mess of it.
really understood it though, and that length of time of investment of your time and investment in understanding the people who are now your partners, that must be worth something.
Absolutely. And it's one of those industries where it's all about relationships. It's all about who you know, and what you know as well. Yeah, to have that network around you. Without that, you're literally no. We could have all the money in the world, all the investment in the world, all the team in the world, and you won't make a success of yourself. You have to know the right people, and know the quirks and the pitfalls and what to do and what not to do in what situation, and that only comes with experience.
But one of your colleagues, Craig, is nuts about Coventry City, and you wouldn't want to take Craig out to Bogota, would you? Because it'd be boring them about Coventry, wouldn't it? Let's face it.
But they are football mad down there, so
Oh, or get away with it then, I guess. But no, he no, I love Craig for his interest in football, I've got to say. But you, I mean, as a company, you seem to be growing. It's a you're secure at both ends. You've been vetted, from an investor point of view, and I've got to admit, I'm one of them. Then basically, I think you've got a real future. But do your due diligence, and we'll put a link within the show notes to actually offer you the opportunity of finding out more about the investment. But Phil, if you had to sort of cast your mind forward another 5-10 years or so, how do you see it playing out?
Yeah, so I think in the very short term, it's more of the same. I think in the next year to 2 years, we're consolidating our position. We're growing rapidly, especially in terms of the gold trading. That's our fastest growing line of business at the moment. I think we've always had since day one. Day one was literally me jumping on a plane, flying to Bogota. We've always had an international focus. We've always been very outward looking, and that's going to get more and more pronounced as time goes on. We're looking, for example, to what we can do to actually get feet on the ground in North America, into the US market, which is the world's biggest market for diamonds, gold, and coloured stones, by volume and value. That's a key market for us to explore. We also are very interested in developing links into Thailand and into the Southeast Asian jewelry market, which is very, very buoyant, and in particular with stones like corundum, ruby and sapphire, which most of which pass through those regions. So yeah, there's a lot of expansion that we want to do. We want to take it obviously one step at a time. We don't have to run before we can walk. We've established 3 offices in the last 4 years, so we've made a lot of progress. I think there's probably about 3 or 4 more hubs we'd like to be working in more closely, which will take another 3 to 5 years before we're fully cemented in all those markets. But those are our sort of key aims over the next 3 to 5 years.
So Phil, you've got some pretty good expansion plans there. You're looking at the moment to fund some of the current expansion. These loan notes we've been talking about. Who else is investing in the company?
Yeah, so we're also looking at one of the activities we're involved in at the moment, aside from everything else that we're doing at the moment, we're also involved in a partnership which involves bullion trading at a fund level. So by that we're actually in a full partnership where we are essentially acting as a partner and an introducer for a bullion trading company that trades between banks in the UAE, which is a very exciting project we're working on, which involves a lot of groundwork, but actually then it produces a passive income for us and for the investor as well. And the investor being a very, very high net worth individual or an institution or a fund more commonly. So we're getting more into that sort of institutional line of investment as well. We do also, part of the loan notes offering, it's convertible. So some of our investors have already, in fact, one of our main investment syndicates have already converted half their loan note into equity. So that's also an option, which a number of other investors are looking at as well. We may develop that onto a full equity issue, because we've kept our powder dry in terms of we still own the vast majority of the business. So we are able to release shares into the market, and that's something we're looking to do potentially on a platform in the next year or 2 as well. So that links in quite nicely, as well as obviously trading revenues and actually building the business organically at the same time, separate from all investment activities. So we're running those in tandem. So across the board, we can get to the point where we're trading effectively into the hundreds of millions within the next 12, 24 months, which is our aim.
So have you gone to any VCs or
Yes, indeed. So we're working with a number of funds at the moment who are involved in the JV route through our partners in the UAE, which is done through an escrow in Switzerland. So that's up and running at the moment. And I'm actually in Dubai next week, a series of meetings with several funds and investors out there as part of the overall drive, but also for this particular investment route that we're developing in Switzerland. So there's a lot of plate spinning. At the moment. So we've got a lot of exciting.
That in many ways, Phil, is encouraging for the individual looking at this, because I know from the other side of the fence, there's a lot of the things I do within Grow CFO, we're talking to CFOs about how to go through a fundraising process, talking about due diligence, getting ready for it, things like that. And the sort of things that VCs and private equity houses will want to see about your business, will want to go into, and that they are very risk-averse bunches of people who want done good returns out of their money. That to me is all good news that you're dealing with them.
And that's what the way we're structuring it is that essentially no capital's at risk, and funds are held in escrow, funds are held in asset, in cash or in escrow. We've always approached this from the point of view is how can we minimize? You can never eliminate all risk, but how we can minimize the risk to a point where it's vanishingly small. And that's the approach we've always taken, and then we're refining that in different forms now. We are also involved in some higher risk activities with trading properties. So, for example, we do engage in some cash trades with gold, but we never do that with investors' money. We always do that solely with clear profits. But that gives us a chance to then generate much higher margins. So over time, that's another plate we can spin up, which helps just the overall profitability of the overall group.
I think we've seen today, Kevin, a business that's run by a leader that has a real grip on lots of different aspects. Firstly, an understanding of his market, but also the finances around it. I mean, I've got to say, Phil, you're a pretty impressive chap. I mean, apart from the fact that you've got a Royal Navy uniform on, that makes you even more impressive. But the work that you're doing for London DE and to bringing in ethical, what's the right word? Ethical trading into this market, and being a champion of that must make you an attractive place for investors' money.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to do, we're trying to do something different. Yeah, there's so many companies out there. It's such a noisy world, I guess, but our market in particular, that we're trying to be different. We're trying to not be the same old offering that other people are offering. We want to have that USP. And I think we've got those clear differentiators in place that we've gone through over the course of the last hour or so, that make us different, and that's the key kind of takeaway. I like to get across to people that we are not the same as the other players in the market.
You have definitely done that today on the next 100 Days podcast. Philip Spencer, thank you very much indeed for joining us today.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure.
So, Graham, really, really interesting there. We had a corporate escape story. What do you do after you leave the Navy?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Combined with a look at it, if you've got a few £1,000s hanging around, where might you invest it? And just one of the many, many alternative investments we seem to have discovered over time. Yeah.
Well, you can tell that I like it because I've taken the step and invested myself. But for me, if you've been listening to this all the way through to the end here, well done. But you also probably got a much clearer idea, or almost as clear as one of his emeralds, idea of the kind of quality of that individual, of Phil Spencer, and the company that he's developing. He's not developed completely because he's got fantastic ideas to bring it into new realms, strengthening his advantages that he's built. But you know what, Kevin? It's some people. One I mentioned Craig, who I just think is a wonderful guy and who works with Phil for London DE. And I know I was sat with him in London last week, and he took a call. And I think one of the points was that the return that the investor was going to get was a little bit, it's almost like too good to be true, this. And anyway, I picked that up, and Craig, of course, handled it really well. But I picked it up later and said, look, how can we actually address that? Because it's not really, is it? And he said, well, not really, because we make, I'm not going to share the numbers that they offered me, but we make that much more per month. So we can afford to make a good offer to investors month by month. So from a loan note point of view, and if you're investing, there's different levels of return. You can be assured that London DE have enough in the bank to always pay you. So, it's one of those natural things, as your antennae go up if you're getting, north of 10% return. You think, crikey, it's got to be some hitch somewhere. Well, there isn't. These guys are significantly, turning over really good returns for themselves that they're able to share and want to share.
Yeah, now I find just chatting to Phil interesting. Back in my consulting career, spent a lot of time working with the army, working in particular with that level of army officer that kind of runs the British Army. That's in majors and your half colonels.
Yeah.
And Phil reminded me a lot of those folk. Quite often they're given a posting for a couple of years. They've got to impress their superior officer. They've got to do something different. And they really do fit into that learning mentality of trying to work out how to do something and genuinely improve it. And great place for us as management consultants, because suddenly, might have started lower down in the army, basic training, all the rest of it says, okay, how do you go capture that hill over there? Yeah. Now, suddenly, same officers has to drive a desk. Never trained to do it, has to, improve a logistics system, something like that. Doesn't know how to do it. We'll ask for help. We'll find out. We'll be so inquisitive. And I just see that coming through in spades with Phil.
Did he? I mean, there was years of effort put into the learning, literally years. And I know that the shall we say the way in which the security people looked at the details of the financial offer, there was so much rigor there. But the reason that I think they gave him the big tick was because of his thoroughness. Because of he's created a business that.
But hey, Graham, we've got to be careful here. When it's not our place to recommend or not recommend investments. We don't have that qualification. You've got to do your due diligence.
I've said it already that you should do your own due diligence. But what I'm trying to get at is that there is an opportunity here for people to consider something different. But I like them. As I said, unashamedly, I've invested myself. So basically, I'm only talking from personal experience. But all I would say is that today's been another a great podcast, this time with Phil Spencer from London DE. I've been Graham Arrowsmith.
I've been Kevin Appleby. Goodbye.
Goodbye.